There's a meeting being held right now at Katanning, Western Australia, on this same Aboriginal Cultural Protection Act that forces anyone on more than 1,100 square metres to get permission from Aboriginal officials to check for, they're going to check for any Aboriginal heritage before people can do any major work on their own property. The mood of this meeting seems very, very angry. It's been called, this meeting, by WA farmers. It's also going to talk about live animal exports. Joining me is one of the speakers there, Federal Nationals leader David Littleproud. David, thank you so much for ducking out of the meeting to talk to us. Now, these poll results for the opposition in WA, it seems to me that a lot of people are saying these heritage laws are a taste of what we'll get with the voice, and support for the voice in Western Australia has fallen through the floor. Is that how you read it?
Yeah, and they're angry and they're fearful. And just remember this, that Tanya Plibersek will also be introducing cultural heritage laws after the voice has been contested at the referendum election. So this is not just a Western Australian problem. This is something that's going to sweep right across the country. And when you've got wall-to-wall state Labor governments, you will see that the extremities that are being proposed here in Western Australia, where a farmer who can just lift up 20 kilograms of dirt out of a dam to desilt it will not be able to do that without getting a permit, which would be at a cost. That is pure insanity when it has been a practice for generations. It's been something that farmers have been able to do in dry times to make sure they can store more water in the good times. And we've never had to go through this sort of bureaucracy, this overreach by a Western Australian government, when in fact Indigenous Australians here have walked hand in hand with pastoralists and grain growers in harmony. And this overreach by this Labor government here in Western Australia, we fear, will be a virus that'll just reach right across the country. And there is a lot of fear, there's a lot of trepidation, and then there's another affront here where they're going to wipe out the live sheep export trade, predicated only on ideology. There is no science to predicate. In fact, the science actually backs that Western Australia does it better than anyone else in the world. Yet Labor have announced they're going to phase it out just because of ideology. And all that'll do is export animal welfare standards to countries like Ethiopia and Sudan, who don't actually have the science of stocking density on boats. They just put as many sheep as they can on a boat and they get paid for what comes off it at the end. That's a perverse outcome. And for animal activists who have lost their moral compass and are morally bankrupt to try and shut this down and push it to other countries, just speaks volumes about these people just being all about ideology and not about practicality. And these farmers over here are angry and they are fearful and they just want help.
Yeah, well, later in the show, I'm going to talk about Labor's attack on business. It's really a war, I think, now. It's a full-on war, Labor federally as well. Now, there's also, but back to the voice, there's also a poll in the Sydney Morning Herald on the weekend that said New South Wales is now the latest state that looks like saying no to the voice. Now, we are meant to vote on the voice at a referendum around October, December, maybe late November. What should happen to that referendum now?
Yeah, look, I think if the Prime Minister had courage and wanted to show some leadership, he'd pause. He'd go back and do what you should do when you have a referendum. You have a constitutional convention, not have one that where only a small cohort of the population turned up to Uluru and say that that's our constitutional convention. Our constitution belongs to every Australian, no matter your race, no matter your religion. It belongs to every Australian. And for him to arrogantly just say that that's the Constitutional Convention. If it was a question just about constitutional recognition and we went through a due process, then we'd be happy to explore that. But this overreach of conflating a voice, that the Nationals got to a position 9 months ago, that we were repeating history. We've had a representative body before. It was called ATSIC. And let me tell you that we bear the scars of that in regional, rural and remote Australia, because that is where it failed the most. And we are repeating the mistakes of the past. Yeah. All we need is an intervention. An intervention on our bureaucracy to get out of Canberra. Exactly. We need an And this is all we need to do is we need an intervention on our bureaucracy. We have the data to know where the gap is and to a geographical area. We don't need to have a regional voice. We actually just need to have bureaucrats out of Canberra sitting around town halls, listening to elders, listening to local government, devising the local programs. There's $4.4 billion spent every year, and we can spend it better if we target it better. And unfortunately, we're going to repeat the mistakes of the past. And Prime Minister... Yeah,
I know. Well, ATSIC was,
and I can tell you, those scars
ATSIC,
are there.
They say, oh, this Aboriginal body is going to solve things, you know. ATSIC's problem was that it turned a blind eye to domestic violence out in the bush to pursue these wild ideological schemes. Exactly what I think we're going to get here.